Good afternoon. I'm Karen Merrill, and I'll be facilitating our July Lunch and Learn Tools for Managing Stress and Building a Healthy Mindset. So, Hans Selle, who you may have heard of, is one of the pioneers in the field of stress management, and he tells us it's not stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it. So to say we live in stressful times is an understatement, right? 16 months ago, we were introduced to COVID-19, responded to changing information on how to deal with it. We're isolated from friends and family outside our household and fearful on many levels. Things began to look up. Vaccines were developed and distributed, and we could open our doors and see others. Things are beginning to feel normal, but not quite so because of the caution around the variants that keep showing up. And these unknowns and stressors are all in addition to the work and personal stressors we experience from time to time. So today, in the next 45 minutes or so, I'll try to give some respite and provide tools to manage stress and build a healthy mindset. So, our objectives. Fact of the matter is, everyone's stressed. And as we've said, the responsibilities of modern living can be overwhelming. But it is possible to learn techniques and strategies to manage and relieve stress. In this seminar, we'll talk about the causes, the symptoms, and our willingness to get started to change how we react and feel. We'll look at the mind-body connection, some reminders of what's within our control. And the goal today is to develop a toolkit and decide to employ at least one strategy towards a healthy mindset to make you feel better going forward. So what is stress? Stress is absolutely normal. It's a psychological and physical reaction to the demands of life. It's the experience of feeling as though the demands in our lives exceed our resources. It can mean lots of things to different people: stress, anxiety, depression, feeling immobilized. It can create that fight or flight mechanism. And the more stressors we experience, the more stressed we tend to feel. Daily stressors impact our health, physical health, and well-being as well. It increases our adrenaline, our blood pressure, and other potential health issues. So stress is definitely linked to health and things we want to be able to get a hold of. So this is a non-exhaustive list, but these are common signs of stress in terms of energy and physical symptoms in terms of headaches, stomach aches, sleep and appetite problems, aches and pains. We can feel like we're getting sick or coming down with things as our immune system gets challenged. We can do some teeth clenching or grinding, which is something that I experience. We can get sick more easily. We can be irritable, angry, depressed, tearful, any number of things. We can look to outside sources to try to make us feel better, including alcohol, drugs, and food that can then have rebounds that are not helpful at all. So it's important to look at this list, see that it involves behavioral, emotional, and physical symptoms, and to think about what signs you may have. How does your body manifest stress? What signs show up first? The more aware we are of how our bodies process stress, the more quickly we can begin to act and feel better. So, what do we do when we're stressed? Many people often feel so overwhelmed by stress that they can forget or lose track of what to do when it hits them. This basic list is a good summary of how to approach any stressful situation. The first thing to do is to recognize that you are stressed. Get a baseline of what your body, mind, and spirit generally feel like and tell you, so that when those things change and you get a visceral or emotional reaction, you'll be able to have the ammunition to make some changes. The second thing is to identify the trigger. What came first? What happened before I started noticing these symptoms? And is this something that I can control and change by my thinking or my behavior? Or is it outside of my control where I need to either ask for help or accept the situation? And then the third piece is to identify what we're willing to do to alleviate our stress and what kind of help or action might you need. So understanding where our stress is coming from is crucial. For example, I'm an EAP counselor, and sometimes people will come in and say that their work is extremely stressful. And then on further inquiry, I might find out that it's actually their personal relationships or what's happening in the lives of their children at this time. So it's important to really identify where the stress is coming from to know what to do about it. Is it our marriage or our relationship? Is it our work and our personal life? Is it the way we're managing food, alcohol, and recreational drugs? Are we so concerned with the world situation that it's infecting our stress? Are we having money issues? Looking deep and deciding where that's coming from can be helpful to make an honest assessment from where that's coming from. Next. So the next thing, and we'll be talking a fair amount about this, is our willingness to look at our actions on our behaviors and see what we might want to change. It's key to this process. For example, you might have heard of all the positive benefits of meditation, and you might want to meditate every morning for 20 minutes. But in reality, you might not have the willingness to wake up earlier to do it. That's okay. You need to start where you are and within the real parameters of your willingness. Maybe instead, you're willing to start with just sitting quietly with your eyes closed for a few minutes and just breathing to get used to that. There also is a big difference between willingness and ability. We may have the ability to change many things, but not the willingness. So it's crucial to kind of decide where that lies, because this is going to be the road to making changes and putting the work in that's necessary. So once we've looked at what it is, what area kind of our lives that's causing the stress and our willingness, the next thing is to take an inventory of where that might be and what we might need to do. Do we need to improve our basic self-care, sleep hygiene, food, exercise? Do we need to have what we call one of those serious conversations with someone in our life, whether it's our partner or our child or a coworker? Did our social life and hobbies take a big hit during the isolation of COVID? And did we need to get back in the habit of cultivating relationships and thinking about those things that we like to do? did during COVID kind of what I call maladaptive coping mechanisms, having too many glasses of wine, staying up late, social media, smoking. Is that a problem? Does that need to be looked at and checked? Is it something outside our immediate control? Is it time to see an EAP therapist, our doctor, a nutritionist? What's a realistic inventory of what needs to change and what is needed to make that happen? Next. So we're going to talk a lot about mindset. And people may fall into categories in this regard. Carol Dweck is a Stanford psychologist. She wrote a well-researched book called Mindset. She talks about the difference between growth mindsets and what she calls fixed mindsets. In a nutshell, people with fixed mindsets tend to believe that their level of intelligence and ability are basically predetermined, and there's not much they can do to change it. So it makes sense that someone with this kind of thinking would probably not be very motivated to aim for higher goals. On the flip side, someone with a growth mindset believes that everything can be learned with effort and perseverance, that we can expand our intellect, broaden our skills, and overcome obstacles. They see self-development and perseverance as the keys to getting ahead. And not surprisingly, this makes them much more successful and happy than those with fixed mindsets. Next. So related to a growth mindset is what we call realistic optimism. It's just what it sounds like. It's not about acting falsely happy or denying reality and painful events. It's rather a conscious decision to focus on what's possible and within our power to change. Research tells us that people who practice this view of realistic optimism tend to feel more control and adopt more positive coping strategies. And a study on attitude related to physical health and lifespan showed people with more real optimistic attitudes have a 55% lower risk of death from all causes than people who didn't. And if you're thinking that you've never considered yourself to be much of an optimist, don't worry. You don't have to change who you are in order to experience a greater sense of optimism. During today's session, we'll review different techniques for reframing your outlook in a way that's realistic and maintainable. So when we looked at that list of things that needed to change, the first thing was the basics. Food, exercise, sleep. These are often the place to start. They're pillars of life and where our stress first shows up. We have a stressful event. We turn to a bag of chips. We may not sleep well. We get overwhelmed and we let go of our exercise. So these are where our stress first shows up, and they're also our first line of defense. If you're stressed and don't know what to do, focus on these three most basic elements of self-care. Oftentimes people will say, I'm so stressed and I just don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. These basics are where to start. The next thing to pay attention to is what we're telling ourselves. We all have a tape that runs in our head that actually programs us and talks to us all day long. And oftentimes this self-talk can be negative. We all have negative thoughts sometimes, and that's normal. It's when we're not consciously aware of these thoughts that they can get in the way. So the first step is to turn into these underlying negative thoughts you're having without judgment and getting down on yourself. Consider what you're saying to yourself about a situation, about others, and yourself, as well as how that internal dialogue might be hurting rather than empowering you. Examples of negative thoughts and questions might include, why is this happening to me? It's too much. I can't do this. I can't handle it. Those are examples of the negative self-thoughts. The second step is to notice how the negative self-talk impacts your feelings and behaviors. For example, if you're feeling bad about yourself, overwhelmed and defeated, how is that making you feel and what might behavior follow? So notice the impact of what you're telling yourself. The next important piece is to interrupt that script that's in our head. That's the next slide. Our thoughts impact our feelings, and our feelings affect our behavior. So if, for example, we tell ourselves that change isn't manageable, then we're likely to feel powerless and probably won't take constructive action to cope with it. But again, we don't want to blame ourselves for this thinking. We want to be aware of it. And once we become more aware of those thoughts, we know what we're working with and gives you more power to do something about it. It's important to remember that you're not stuck with your thoughts. We don't have to believe everything we think. We actually have control over how we choose to interpret challenges or criticism. If you view them with a fixed mindset, you're likely to assume your talents or abilities are lacking. But if you come at them with a growth mindset, there's lots of opportunities for self-growth. So how do we turn on this growth mindset and silence our fixed voice? The first step is knowing what that voice sounds like to us. For example, are you telling yourself you're not going to be able to do this? Or what's going to happen when I screw up? Maybe the voice reminds you of somebody negative in your life. Whatever it is and whatever it says, you don't have to listen. In fact, this might be one of the times that you're encouraged to interrupt and talk back. You might counter it with positive self-talk, like, what's possible here? What strengths, resources do I need to draw on? What are my options? What's within my power to change? Who might I ask for help? You might tell yourself an affirmation like, I can handle the situation. I'm going to take it slow, take a deep breath, and take things one step at a time. Changing the script in your head is a big step. Silencing the negative voice and reframing the thoughts takes practice. Examples: a fixed mindset might say, you're not cut out to do this. The growth mindset, I'm not sure I can do it now, but I think I can learn. A fixed mindset would say, what if I fail? It'll prove what a failure I am. Growth mindset thinking means, feels, and knows that failures are part of any process. Almost all successful people have failed many times on their way to making great achievements. It just means there's something else to learn. Try using these examples I've just given you, or certainly developing your own. The key is to find ways of reframing your thoughts that feel authentic and empowering to you. Then practice, practice, practice. You'll catch yourself engaged in negative self-talk sometimes, and that's normal. It takes patience and a long time to change. The goal is not to have them anymore, but to identify and interpret them before they take over. The more you practice, the more the new habits will become what you're used to. Next, learn a new language. In addition to reframing negative thoughts, it's also important to mind your choice of words. Sometimes a very subtle shift in language can make a big difference. For example, using the word challenge versus problem can change your outlook. Adding yet to the end of a sentence can do the same thing, such as I'm not good at public speaking yet, or I can't do this yet. These changes can transform a fixed mindset into a growth mindset and boost your motivation. Also, try changing haves tos to get tos. Instead of I have to go here, I have to do this, try I get to do this. I'm able to walk, drive to get there. I have resources, I have a job, etc. It's linked to gratefulness, which we'll talk about later. But it's amazing what a difference a small shift in language can make. Next. So this is huge and a challenge that we deal with our whole life. When we're stressed, it's helpful to remember what we can and cannot control. And the fact of the matter is, the only thing we really can control is ourselves. Here's a list of what's in our control. What we say and do, how honest we are, the effort we give to our work and those close to us, how much we smile and say thank you, how much we gossip with others, how much time we spend on social media, and whether or not we reach out and ask for help when we need it. Look at these two interacting circles. Really, where our energy belongs and what we should focus on is where things that matter and things that you can control intersect. The rest really is energy that's ill-used. So focusing on what you control is always important. Now we're going to look next at what we can't control. You may have figured this out, but we can't control other people. This is a big one. We can't control our spouse, our children, or our boss. Most situations, although frustrating, we feel like they're wrong, but they're generally not within our control. And we can't control other people's problems. We can, of course, be good friends, sounding boards, and support others, but it's also important to begin to recognize the difference between helping someone and meddling or overextending. Are we doing too much? One positive outcome of realizing what's not in our control is that we can let go of many things and get back to what is within our control and harness the energy that way. Next, the next slide talks about identifying our fears. A big part of stress is thinking about what might happen. Can you begin to see if we're recognizing a catastrophic future, what I call awfulizing or catastrophizing? Do you doubt your ability to cope with disappointment or your ability to cope with disappointing others? Asking that hard question about what the worst case scenario might look like. Is there a silver lining here? Are you replaying old outcomes in your head? And can you and are you willing to redirect that thinking? These are also important in the process of developing a positive mindset. Next, remember that you are the mindset. You are the master of your mindset. You are the creator of it and the one who has control over changing it. So we need to be really honest with ourselves and think about how our mindset has impacted us up to now. How might that have affected relationships, personal and professional success, our level of happiness? What would you like it to be going forward? How might you like it to look differently? And take a deep look at why this is important to you. What steps will you start with? I'm actually going to challenge you after this seminar to take 1 to 3 small steps, manageable small goals that you might follow from the suggestions to help reduce stress and change your mindset. But we are the master and the creator of how we move with our thinking and our behavior. Next, practicing an attitude of gratitude is tremendously helpful in keeping a mindset focused on growth, as well as increasing positive feelings and boosting mental health. Just as is true of realistic optimism, gratitude is not about forcing false positivity in our lives. It's about directing our focus to the things we feel good about. What lights up our life? What are we grateful to have in our life? Choosing gratitude over fault finding in ourselves and others is very helpful. A simple way to begin this is by telling friends, coworkers, and families how much we appreciate them. Humans are programmed to want to connect, and personal growth is determined by our strength of relationship. Another great way is by keeping a gratitude journal. You may have heard the positive research around people who, if in the first thing in the morning, last thing in the evening, they identify 3 things they're grateful for, they're happier, more successful people. And even more so if they write those things down. This is also linked to self-esteem and resilience. It's a way of learning how to bounce back when challenges occur, and even bouncing forward, learning from challenges so that we're stronger than we were beforehand. Resilience is linked to self-esteem. If we don't value ourselves and feel worthy, we're much less likely to practice good self-care and more likely to interpret failures as confirmation we're not good enough. But being able to separate our failures from our core worth is very important. It gives us strength and strengthens our self-esteem. It also makes it easier to set boundaries, saying no to people or things that drain you and that keep you further from your goals. Next. So when I ask you about trying 1 to 3 things later today or this week, here's a cheat sheet for doing that. Some tips and tricks, ideas for actions. Prepping for tomorrow, putting your phone away, calling a friend, going outside and breathing fresh air, drinking water, staying hydrated, deep breathing, massage, research around interacting with animals and how it lowers your blood pressure and the animal's blood pressure when you pet them. Arm yourself with healthy snacks so that you don't turn to high, high fat carbs when you're feeling stressed and need to munch on things. Slow your breathing. Talk about what's bothering you. Do something specifically to help your stress. You're worth it. Take a nap, power nap. Work on the things you've been putting off. And something that I would add to this is at the end of each day, think about what went well that day. Oftentimes we have our to-do list that seems as if it's grown during the day, and we can feel bad about what we've accomplished and what we have to face the next day. So I say leave that aside and think instead of what went right and focus on that. Next, become your own biggest fan. If you don't believe in yourself, it'll be hard for others to. Oftentimes we've had an internal narrator for so long, we don't even notice it. But it's critical that we do and what we tell ourselves, because that will affect how we think and how we feel. So check that story we tell ourselves. Change the script. Focus on your strengths. If you have a hard time doing that, think about what you like to do. Think about the compliments you get. What do people say you're good at? What are those things that absorb you and you don't even realize you spent hours working on? Those are where your strengths lie. Delete perfect from our language. It's impossible, and it can only make you feel bad about yourself. Brene Brown has made her lifetime professional work around this and has written a book called Making Friends with Your Imperfections. Don't compare and despair. It's easy to compare with others, particularly in this climate of social media. It's easy to see pictures of others and paint a picture of what their life looks like. And we idealize it and then compare ourselves with that and can feel badly about that. So that's something to be aware of and know that everybody fights the same battles. We're all dealing with the same kinds of things. Expect to get off track. We can't wave a magic wand and change the way we think and our behaviors all at once. So know that this takes time and practice, and learn from past mistakes and failures and what challenges you've had and what things you implemented that helped you get back on track more easily. So these are ways of remembering to become your own biggest fan and believe in yourself. Next. So tying it all together, cultivating a mindset for success is a process that we'll always be practicing. Be patient with yourself as you work to notice, challenge, and shift your thoughts and actions. And remember, it starts with small steps. If you spotted the fixed mindset at work, undermining your potential for success, fear not. You're already ahead of the game by having this awareness, and changing mindset is possible at any age or life stage. While we reviewed steps you can take on your own, many people find it helpful to work with a trained professional, a counselor, a coach, or therapist. So tune in to your inner dialogue. What are you telling yourself? Talk back to those ants, automatic negative thoughts. Take steps to build resilience, practice, and be patient. Things to remember. Next, as we begin to close today's seminar, a reminder of a pocketful of practices. We can be greatly altered by simple things. Believing in laughter and humor, smiling. Research is if we even smile into an empty room, we feel better. Laugh at ourselves, laugh out loud. Look forward to one thing each day. Set an intention of doing that. Slow down. Turn off the news, particularly at night. Practice optimism. If we can be taught to feel bad, we can certainly be taught to feel good. Next. So, what does laughter do for us? Laughter is one of the best medicines, and it's free. Boosts our immune system, decreases cortisol, that hormone that rises when we feel stress. It oxygenates our entire system. It's one of the few things that stimulates both sides of our brain at the same time. It improves memory, creativity, the ability to learn. It lowers our blood sugar, creates openings to receive information, boosts serotonin, that feeling good hormone. It establishes rapport with shared insight. It builds rapport with others when you laugh together, helps us cope, relaxes us, and helps repair conflict with others. So remembering, particularly when we're dealing with a lot of what we call kind of heavy things, to keep it on the light side and try to laugh at something at least once a day. Next. So some more resources to help send you on your way with. Mindset by Carol Dweck. Mindset Online has got great resources. I mentioned The Gifts of Information by Brene Brown, of Imperfection, by Brene Brown. Tony Robbins has done some great motivational work. And this last one is a website on positive psychology. Martin Zegelman is a psychologist who's done a lot of work at the University of Pennsylvania, and there's a lot of information there. So we're so happy that you joined us today. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.